Hey everyone, Canadian Sergeant Steele here, and today I am very excited to be talking to you about the brand new Siege Regiment in the 2025 Astra Militarum Codex. So let's dive in and talk about what this is. In our new codex, we're going to have several new detachments available to us, as all armies have been. My favorite so far is the Siege Regiment, so I wanted to talk about it first in this video. If you're watching this in the future, there may be other videos already out on the other detachments that you can watch, so check out the channel and see what's available there. This one, and the reason it excites me so much, is because of the theme of the detachment. So, this is the idea of an in place regiment fighting out in a drawn out siege, going over trench lines, throwing in artillery, and everything else in order to conquer the enemy. I really like this style of play. And when it comes to playing Astra Militarum, this is one of my favorite thematic ways to bring my armies to life, is to play in this style. And that doesn't mean necessarily just pure castling or just lines of infantry or just tons of artillery. I think it's a much more complex way to play, and it has several strategies. And I think this detachment lends itself to that. So without any further ado, let's dive into it. So the first thing we have is the detachment rule, and this is artillery support. So at the start of the battle round, so it's regardless of whether you go first or second, it's the start of every battle round, select one of the following types of artillery support. So that means for all 5 turns of the game, you get to select one of the following to happen at the beginning of the battle round. First is creeping barrage. So roll 1d6 for each enemy unit, more than 12 inches from every model from your army. So it's every single model in your army, more than 12 inches, that is on the battlefield. On a 5 up, until the end of the battle round, that unit is shaken. While a unit is shaken, subtract 2 from its move characteristics, subtract 2 from advance and charge rolls made for it. So, to touch on that real quick, what I think that's going to do is be really good against a melee focused army round 1, maybe even rounds 2 and 3. It just depends. And most likely not. Very much a round 1 use. And especially I'm thinking World Eaters would be a great choice to use this against if they do not have a lot of shooting and you want to slow them down and prevent them from getting in the charges. That could be absolutely devastating for an army like that. If you reduce, think about this, that's 4 inches of movement taken away. And why? Because it's their move and advance rolls, right? So that's 2 inches there. And then they're going to charge. They're a melee army. So that's another -2. And that really, if you start to think strategically about where you put your models in your deployment zone and how far they can go, and talk to your opponent ahead of time, hey, what's the maximum distance this unit can move and that unit can move with or without stratagems, right? What's possible here? Can you advance and charge? How do you do that? You talk that out, and then here you could add 4 inches to your safety net. And that's really big. And I really like this one. But it's most likely just going to be turn 1 use. Next is incendiary bombardment. Select a number of enemy units, more than 12 inches from every model from your army that is on the battlefield until the end of every round. Those enemy units, or until the end of the battle round, sorry, those enemy units are scattered. While a unit is scattered, it cannot have the benefit of cover. The maximum number of units you can select this way depends on the battle size, as shown below. So there's a nice little chart, and this also impacts the next one of these 2 detachment options. And that is an incursion, so 1,000 points or less, 2 units. Strike force, 1,000, 2,000 points, 3. And onslaught, 2 to 3,000 points, like 2,001 to 3,000 points, 4 units. So on a regular 2,000 point game, you'll be able to select 3 units that are more than 12 inches from the models in your army. Okay, and then those 3 units lose the benefit of cover. This is also a really good early game stratagem, but it can also be used to great effect in later turns. And what it can do is by removing cover, you are allowing yourself to take out usually units that are holding objectives or hidden behind terrain and to be able to wound them much easier. So, for example, your opponent has a unit in their deployment zone sitting on an objective, and then maybe one or two, say in no man's land in the middle of the table, that are pretty far away from your deployment zone, and you've castled back turns 1 and 2, and they're holding objectives also. You can do incendiary bombardment, select those 3 units, they lose cover. Then you could rein in your small arms fire if you have line of sight, or artillery fire especially, so that your armor penetration on your artillery matters even more. And you're able to then peel away at your opponent's infantry typically that are holding those objectives. So I find this one a pretty good tool to have at our tool belt. So the next one is smoke shells. Select a number of units from your army. Until the end of the battle round, those units have the stealth ability. Selecting the number of units is the same as incendiary bombardments. So in a 2,000 point game, you could select up to 3. Now, that is really important. It could be used in a number of different ways, and I think will probably be the one you choose most often at the beginning of the battle rounds, because this is universal. Unless you're fighting a pure melee army, this one will always come in handy to keep your units alive. By having stealth, you're going to have -1 to be hit by ranged attacks. So this will be able to keep your artillery alive, your infantry holding objectives, your big tanks moving up and shooting down the enemy, and just has a lot of utility to add a lot of resiliency to your units. I really, really like this one, and I think it's the strongest of the 3 and the one that you're going to use most often. So overall, for the detachment rule, I really like all 3 of these options. I think they're very good, and each has their place depending. I want to go back to incendiary bombardment real quick, and what I would really recommend with this one is taking out your opponent's backfield objective holders earlier mid game, and particularly early game, so you can force your opponent to move less favorable units for holding objectives back if they want to hold those. So you can really force your opponent's hand early on by using a stratagem like this and making your opponent move back. It may or may not be necessary depending on what artillery you're bringing and the type of armor penetration you're going to have with it. But usually removing cover is always going to be a benefit. Now, let's talk about the enhancements. So first up, we have Eager Advance. So infantry officer model only. While the bearer is leading a regiment unit, that unit has the Scout 6 ability. So this is really cool. It gives one unit that your officer is with its regiment. So that's going to be, your Cadians, your Krieg, your Catachan typically, and could be some other, well, that's usually all your officers can attach to in terms of regular infantry squads. And then it's going to give them the ability to scout forward 6 inches, which I think is really, really awesome. So that's going to add a lot, and you could do some really interesting things like that. Say, for example, you could give a unit of Krieg, 20-man unit of Krieg, with a Krieg command squad, scout 6 inches. And suddenly you have this super resilient brick of units moving forward. And then you do deploy smoke shells at the beginning of the battle round, and you give that unit stealth. So now they've moved forward, like, basically pre-game, and they're out in the middle of no man's land, and they have smoke to screen them, and they're moving for the objectives, which I think is really, really good. Or you could shift them out of line of sight, maybe back behind cover in that early game to keep them protected a little bit, and then use your smoke shells on things like maybe exposed artillery or tanks and so forth in order to keep things alive. Next, we have flash grenades. So, infantry officer model only. Enemy units cannot use the fire overwatch stratagem to shoot at the bearer's unit. That's pretty neat. I don't know if I don't know if I would take that one every single game, but I do think it's interesting, and I think it could be very strong. especially depending on which armies you might be going up against. If you're going up against Gene Stealer Call and they get a bunch of hand flamers, or say the Infernus Marines, right? And they're out there with their flamers. This could be really strong to keep a unit alive and move them into position. Otherwise, those types of like typically torrent weapon units will threaten your infantry units and allow them to be easily deleted from the table. So I could see some use for this, but I don't know if I would take it all the time. It's pretty cool. Legacy Sidearm is the next one. So infantry officer model only, add 2 to the attacks characteristic of the bearer's pistols. I really like this one because I'm just imagining a 3-shot plasma pistol. Yes. And how exciting that is, and especially depending on the model and the rules for that model. And so I think this could be a lot of fun. And you could do things like build blobs of infantry with this character with a plasma pistol running out there with a squad with plasma meltaguns just laying waste to other units in the middle of the table. And that's just a lot of fun. And I like the idea of being able to buff a weapon that way. Next, we have Stalwart's Honors, officer model only. So now notice this is the first one that's just officer, not infantry. Officer model only, while the bearer is leading a unit. When that unit is issued an order, it is also affected by the take cover order. So that's really great. I like this one. I think it goes really good with some of the other things we're seeing in here. Flash grenades, smoke shells. So you give Stalwart's Honors to say like a Krieg command squad, right? So the officer model gets that. The unit always has cover. You give them you attach maybe and then they're able to just move out in the open, and they always have cover, and then you're using smoke shells to give them stealth, and they have their medics to resurrect units. They're going to be really, really resilient, and I like that. I like the idea of that, and being able to stay in place or move around and stay kind of hidden and entrenched in a way, right? In a siege regiment, which is really neat. So overall, I do really like these enhancements. I could see most of them being taken. The only one is flash grenades. I'm a little iffy on myself, just because of the meta that I find myself in and what I play against. So normally it's only like 2-3 games a year I go against big squads with torrent weapons, so flash grenades doesn't come up as often. But Eager Advance and Legacy Sidearm, super fun, and Stalwart's Honors all have a lot of utility to them, and I can see taking those regularly all the time. So now let's talk about stratagems. First off is the trench fighters for 1 command point. It's a battle tactic stratagem. It's in the fight phase just after an enemy unit has selected its targets. So fight phase, they've said, okay, my unit here is going to swing at that unit there. You target one of your Astra Militarum infantry units from your army that was selected as a target of one or more of the attacking unit's attacks. The effect is, until the end of the phase, each time a model in your unit is destroyed, if that model has not fought this phase, roll 1d6, adding 2 to the result if it is a regiment model. This is going to be really good once again on those Krieg, Catachan, and Cadian blobs of infantry. On a 4+, remember you're adding 2 if it's a regiment, okay? You could use this on Ogrins and Bulgrins. It'd be a 4-up. But if you're not doing Ogrins and Bulgrins, for example, and you're doing your Krieg, Cadian, Catachans, then it's a 2, because you add 2 to the result. Do not remove the model from play. It can fight after the attacking unit has finished making its attacks and then is removed from play. So in other words, you get fight on death with your infantry. Now, is that really going to be that impactful? I don't know, but I'll tell you what. There have been many games. If I just had a few more swings to plink off a few more wounds, I would have held an objective. I would have overwhelmed my opponent, so on and so forth. And so I do think this is a very handy tool to have in our back pocket when we're fighting out of the trenches. So I do really like this one, and I will find myself using it. Next, we have Over the Top. This is our only 2 command point stratagem in this whole detachment. It is a strategic ploy, and it's at the start of your command phase. So one infantry officer model from your army is the target, and the effect is until the end of the phase when your model issues the move, move, move order. It can issue that order to any number of eligible friendly infantry regiment units, regardless of the range to your model. In other words, you can get on the Voxcaster and say, move, 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 and everybody hears the call, and everybody gets an extra 3 inches of movement. So when would you use this? I imagine probably almost at any point in the game, beginning, middle, or end. And it's when you can see that getting that extra 3 inches of movement on all those units could help you secure the objectives and overwhelm your opponent. So I could see this turn 1. I could see it turn 5. Just depends on the context of your game. So I also think this one has a lot of kind of usability and something that we always need to keep in mind. Now, don't forget, move, move, move is a modification of the move characteristic, right? Adds 3 inches. So if you advance, that means you'd be moving 9 inches plus d6. So minimum 10 inches up to 15 inches. That is phenomenal, especially if you're running big, heavy blobs of infantry, big 20-man bricks with command squads that give them feel no pains and support them, and they're running forward. You are really, really going to hold some stuff down early game. And so this could be very strong, especially depending on your overall strategy and how you build your lists. Next is Flare Burst. It's also 1 command point, word your stratagem. So it's your shooting phase when you do it, and the target is 1 Astra Militarum character unit from your army that has not been selected to shoot this phase. So it could be, this one truly could be a vehicle. It's not just infantry. And the effect is until the end of the phase. Each time your unit makes an attack that targets a visible enemy unit within 12 inches, you can re-roll the hit roll. So you could use this on, once again, a big brick of infantry with a commander in it. And then they just get re-roll hit rolls. You could use this on a tank commander or Rogaldorn tank commander and just re-roll your hit rolls. That's Flare Burst is real nice. Now, one of the ways that I could see myself using it is I often like to get my Rogaldorns close and personal. And that's because of the Meltas. I love running Meltas on them, so I want to get in Melta range. I get up close and personal, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm re-rolling all my hit rolls. My opponents are going to be devastated by that. And so I do think this is going to be most powerful on your tanks. However, this could make your infantry devastating if they're fighting other light or medium armored units. Those lasgun shots are no joke. And there's a later stratagem I'm about to talk about you could pair this with to make that unit extra deadly. So I think Flare Burst also has a lot of utility. Very good stratagem. Next, Callous Sacrifice 1 command point. It's in your shooting phase. You select 1 platoon unit from your army. So this is not regiment. This is platoon. That is within engagement range of 1 or more enemy units. Until the end of the phase, enemy units are not considered to be within engagement range of your unit for the purpose of selecting targets of ranged weapons. Until the end of the phase, each time an enemy model loses a wound, while that model's unit is within engagement range of your unit, roll 1d6. On a 4+, one model from your unit is destroyed after the attacking unit has finished making its attacks. So in other words, you can shoot in to your own platoon units that are in combat. You could fire artillery. You could shoot tanks. You could shoot other infantry. You can shoot into your own units. And every time an enemy unit loses a wound, so it's every time a model loses a wound. So you'll do your total wounds, and it's wounds lost, not necessarily damage dealt. Okay. So, like if you're hitting them with flat 3 damage siege cannons, and they're only 1 wound models, or say they're 2 wound Space Marine, you're hitting them with a flat 3 damage weapon, that model loses 2 wounds. Okay. So every time they lose a wound, you roll 4 up and then one of your own models that are in that combat are destroyed. I love this, and this is something that I have missed for the longest time. It's something we could do in the older editions of the game where we could fire with our blast templates and they could scatter over top of our own units and kill our own models and stuff. And we don't have blast templates and flamer templates and stuff anymore. So this is a great way of just being able to carelessly kill your units off. And if you want a great book that has something like this in it, go read First and Only by Dan Abnett for the Gaunt's Ghost. Great book, and it's got a scene like this in it. It's also got a great follow-up scene that's very short, and I really like it. Next is Furious Fusillade, or Fusillade, however you say that. It is one command point. It is a strategic ploy stratagem. So in your shooting phase, you target one platoon unit, again a platoon unit, from your army that has not been selected to shoot this phase. Until the end of the phase, add 1 to the attack's characteristic of ranged weapons equipped by models in your unit while targeting an enemy unit within half range. Okay. Half range. So if we talk about las guns, plasma guns, those are 24-inch range. Okay. So if you're 12 inches, you're less than 12 inches, you use 1 CP, you're going to add 1 to the attack's characteristic. Then if you give them first ring fire, second ring fire, you're going to add 1 to the attack's characteristic of the rapid fire weapons. Oh, I'm loving this. So then this is what I was talking about. You could use Flare Burst to give yourself reroll hit rolls. So you could, this is so tasty. So you had a Legacy Sidearm. Remember, the enhancement from earlier adds 2 to a pistol characteristic. So you got a plasma pistol wielding officer. He now has a 3-shot plasma pistol. Now with Furious Fusillade, if you're within less than 6 inches, because of 12-inch range, you could make that a 4-shot pistol. Then if you're also, say, less than 6 inches, you're really close. Now your plasma guns are 4 shots rather than just 2 shots because of rapid fire plus this, or wait, hold on. Rapid fire would add 1 and then take, first ring fire, second fire would add 1 more. And then you add this. You're really stacking this, by the way, at this point. But then you add another. Now you could have a 4-shot plasma gun. So you have 3 plasma guns because of command squad, right? Plus your 20-man unit. So 3 plasma guns plus this plasma pistol. That's a Legacy Sidearm. Okay. That's 18 plasma shots total that you could have if you have 2 attached character units with that 20-man blob. That you are essentially re-rolling, if you use Flare Burst, all hit rolls against the enemy unit. And that's also, by the way, this is all ranged weapons. So you also add number of shots to your melta-guns or your las guns. So whether you're shooting light infantry or something medium or heavier, this has a lot of utility to be paired with these other things to really have devastating volleys of fire. I love Furious Fusillade, especially for the way that I like to build my units and put them on the battlefield. I think this is an excellent stratagem, and I will likely use it every single game. Every single game, without a shadow of a doubt. Next is the last one, and this one's really fun. It's Minefield, 1 command point. It is a war gear stratagem. So you do this at the start of your opponent's charge phase. So they haven't declared any units yet. It just started. You're gonna use this. You're gonna select 1 platoon unit from your army. The effect is until the end of the phase, each time an enemy unit ends a charge move within engagement range of your unit that you've selected, roll 1d6 for each model in that enemy unit. So in other words, especially if your opponent has a horde and they've just charged this whole horde into you, you roll a d6 for each model. On a 5+, that enemy unit suffers a mortal wound to a maximum of 6 wounds. I really like this one because oftentimes some armies have melee units that are big blobs. And so they can have 20 10-man units and they're charging them in. and then you're rolling a d6 to each one. This could be guaranteed 3 to 6 mortal wounds, depending on if it's 10 to 20 models, and the statistical average of rolling the dice. So I really like Minefield, and if your opponent knows you have it, it's one of those things that's going to make them hesitant, like having a flamer, right? So they're going to like look at you and go, do I want to charge you? Is this really what I want to do right now? And so this, I think, is very exciting and very fun to kind of throw out there and surprise your opponent, deal a few mortal wounds, and maybe you've paired this with Overwatch and you did use your flamers right, and you've really poured it on them to get into that charge. It could really help you out, especially because you're talking about trying to be an emplaced army coming out of cover, coming out of trenches, and moving forward. I really like this one. So that's everything. I know I stumbled through a little bit of that. So sorry about the Stalwarts Honors bit there and getting confused on that one. I forgot about the leading the unit part when I started reading that one off. But this is all very, very exciting, I think, and very interesting. I really like all of this. I really do. I think this works well with cavalry. I think this works well with artillery. I think it works well with infantry. I think there's use definitely for tanks in it as well. And this is both our carriage artillery and our self-propelled artillery. I think it works well for both of those. And you don't even actually have to have artillery and use this one. I think it has things that benefit artillery, but you don't have to, right? And so that could allow you to just bring another army and you could pretend like your infantry are off the battlefield supporting you the way they often are in real life, right? Um, so that makes this a very interesting detachment. Is it the strongest one we have? I don't know. I doubt it, but it's a lot of fun. And it's one of the reasons why I'm very excited about it. I'm covering it first here on my channel before all the others. So I'm definitely going to be running this one. I'm going to be using the new artillery teams. I'm going to be using my field ordnance batteries. I'm going to be using my basilisks and my manticores and everything else to run in this detachment, along with my blobs of infantry, because that's how I like to play. And I think this is going to lean really well into that. So that's all I have for you all today. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if you have, please like and subscribe. I know only about half of you who watch my videos are subscribed, so don't forget to click that, follow my channel. I'm going to be doing lots of more guard content, especially for this new codex and through all of 2025 and beyond, because I love the guard. It's what I do, Katie Sergeant Steel, right? Playing with some Krieg as well. So definitely check all that stuff out and support the channel that way. I'd really appreciate it. If you really love this stuff and you want to actually directly give to me, there's a number of ways you can do that. I do have membership service where you can also join my Discord if you're rank of private or higher. You could then chat with me and others who are part of the Katie and Sergeant Steel community there. It's real exciting. We're having some great discussions right now with the new codex and new models and stuff. So I'm really super excited for that. Or there's a bunch of affiliate links or my own merchandise links down below. You can click on those and support me there. One of the products I just want to highlight that I love the most is the Squad Marks Clear Movement Trays. You guys see them in all my battle reports and all my photos on Instagram. They really are my favorite thing. And I just played a game the other day without them because I accidentally left them at home and I was devastated. I was absolutely devastated by not having those. So definitely one of my favorite things. So check them out for yourself if you haven't yet. But I know a lot of you have, and so I really appreciate that as well. As always, have fun wargaming. And remember, Cadia stands.